All right, so today we're really diving into this book, Beautiful Tsunami, it's called, by Javier Marti.
Okay.
Have you heard of this one?
I have heard of it, yes.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
He uses this really intense metaphor right off the bat, calling AI a beautiful tsunami.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so intriguing about the book is that it really captures that sense of something that's incredibly powerful and transformative, but also potentially very destructive.
Right, it's like awe-inspiring and terrifying at the same time.
Exactly.
So before we get into the how to surf part of this whole thing, I think it's worth spending some time unpacking that metaphor a bit,
Yeah, definitely.
because Marti paints a pretty stark picture of where we are right now as a society. And frankly, it's a little unsettling.
Yeah, no kidding.
He talks about this sense of decline, economic instability, political system
Yeah.
that seems incapable of dealing with any of it.
Yeah, it's funny because when you first hear that kind of talk, it's easy to dismiss it as, just pessimism or doom and gloom. But then when you actually dig into the arguments that he's making, he backs it up with a lot of really specific examples and trends that are kind of hard to ignore.
Yeah, and he doesn't just say like, oh, the world is falling apart.
Yeah.
He actually connects those trends to this rise of AI and how it's accelerating certain things that were already happening.
Right. And it's that acceleration that I think is really key.
Yeah.
Because it's not just that these problems exist, it's that they're happening at a pace that we've never seen before, and our existing institutions just aren't equipped to handle it.
Exactly. And one of the things he keeps coming back to is this growing gap between the super wealthy, you know, tech-powered elite
Mm-hmm.
and everyone else.
Right.
He even uses the word feudal at one point,
Wow.
which is a pretty jarring image, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like, are we really headed back to the Middle Ages in a world of self-driving cars and robot assistants?
Right. But I think the point he's making there is that technology on its own isn't inherently good or bad. It's how we choose to use it.
Right.
And if we're not careful, we could end up creating a world where a very small number of people have an extraordinary amount of power and control, and everyone else is basically at their mercy.
And that's where his whole argument about universal basic income, or UBI, comes in.
Right.
Which is often presented as kind of this solution to AI-driven unemployment.
The silver bullet.
Yeah, but Marty suggests that it might not be the panacea that everyone thinks it is.
Yeah.
In fact, he argues that it could actually make us more vulnerable in the long run.
Yeah, that was a really interesting part of the book because UBI is something that a lot of people have been talking about, as this kind of like safety net. But he really flips the script on that and says, well, what if it's not a safety net at all? What if it's actually a way to exert even more control over people's lives?
Right, because it all comes down to this question of how UBI is actually implemented.
Right.
And who controls it.
Exactly.
And Marty connects UBI to the rise of things like digital IDs and central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs.
Yeah. Which sounds incredibly boring.
It does.
To most people.
But it has huge implications for like the fabric of our lives.
Yeah. I mean, this is where things start to feel a little bit like Black Mirror, right?
Totally. Okay, so for those of us who are not economists, break it down for us. What are CBDCs and why should we care?
Okay, so imagine a world where all of your money is digital. I mean, we're already kind of moving in that direction, but
Yeah.
I mean, completely digital. There's no more cash. And instead of having your money in a bank account, you have it in an account that's directly controlled by the government.
So it's like Venmo, but run by the Fed.
Basically.
And what's to stop them from just like turning off your money if you do something they don't like?
Exactly.
Or like, if you say something on social media that they don't agree with.
Or if you don't get a vaccine, or if you forget to renew your driver's license on time. The possibilities for control are kind of endless.
It's like having your entire financial life on someone else's spreadsheet.
Hmm.
And that someone happens to be the government.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a pretty scary thought.
Yeah, and it all ties back to this idea of the black box problem that Marty keeps mentioning, which is this idea that as these AI systems become more complex, it becomes harder and harder to understand how they're making decisions.
Right.
And that's a problem on multiple levels.
Right.
I mean, for you as an individual, it means that you might not know why you're being denied a loan or a job opportunity, or even medical treatment.
Or why your insurance rates just tripled.
Exactly.
And on a societal level, it means that we're essentially handing over a huge amount of power to these opaque algorithms without really understanding how they work or what their biases might be.
And we just have to trust that the people in power are going to use those algorithms for good. Which, let's face it, is a pretty big assumption to make.
Yeah, and that's where Marty's warning about this new kind of feudalism starts to feel a little too real for comfort.
Right, and I think that's what makes his book so unsettling, but also so important.
Hmm.
Because he's not afraid to ask these really tough questions about the direction we're headed in and what's at stake if we don't start paying attention.
Right.
He's not just trying to scare us, he's trying to wake us up.
Right. And say, like, hey, look, this is happening, whether we like it or not. So we better start figuring out how to deal with it.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to get a little anxious here.
Yeah,
It's like we're surfing straight towards a techno dystopia.
right.
Is there any way to, like, steer this thing in a different direction?
Well, that's the good news. Marty doesn't just leave us hanging with this bleak vision of the future.
Okay, good. Because I was about to paddle back to shore.
Yeah, no, he actually offers a lot of really practical advice about how to not just survive, but actually thrive in this age of AI.
Okay, so what's the secret? Do we need to, like, stockpile canned goods and build an off-grid bunker?
No, 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 it's not about that.
Okay, okay.
It's about becoming more adaptable, more entrepreneurial, more in control of your own destiny.
Okay. I like the sound of that. So what's step one?
Well, one of the most radical suggestions he makes, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, is this idea of moving away from major cities and tech hubs if necessary.
Seriously?
Yeah, like pack your bags and head for the hill.
You're kidding, right?
No, I mean, he's not saying everyone needs to go full on Walden Pond, but he does suggest that it might be worth considering moving to areas that are less impacted by AI and automation.
Interesting. So, like, going where the robots aren't.
Kind of. Think about it. If AI is going to disproportionately disrupt certain sectors and regions, then it makes sense to position yourself where the opportunities are, even if it means making a geographical change.
Okay, I can see that. It's like being proactive instead of reactive.
Exactly. It's about riding the wave instead of getting crushed by it.
So instead of trying to hold on to a sinking ship,
Right.
you're like jumping on a life raft and heading for higher ground.
Exactly. And he actually knows people who have done this.
Right.
Yeah, they've sold their homes in places like San Francisco and New York and moved to smaller towns or rural areas where the cost of living is lower and the pace of life is a little bit slower.
Wow, that's a pretty drastic move.
It is. But it's also a really interesting thought experiment, right?
Right. Like, what if instead of trying to outcompete the machines,
Yeah.
we focused on creating a life that's more aligned with our values
Right.
and less tethered to this, like, hyper-competitive, tech-driven world?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's one option. What about the rest of us who aren't quite ready to give up our city apartments just yet?
Well, another big thing he talks about is building multiple streams of income, both online and offline.
Ah, the old side hustle.
Exactly, but it's more than just a side hustle. It's about creating a portfolio.
So if one area gets disrupted by AI,
Right.
you have others to fall back on.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. But in this case, it's like, don't put all your algorithms in one basket.
Exactly.
So what might that look like in practice? Like, what kind of income streams are we talking about here?
Well, he doesn't get too prescriptive about it because it really depends on your individual skills and interests.
Right.
But he encourages readers to think about their passions, what they're uniquely good at, and then look for ways to monetize those things.
So it could be anything from, like, freelance writing to online coaching
Hmm.
to selling handmade goods on Etsy.
Exactly. And he emphasizes the importance of creativity, adaptability, and finding ways to add value in a world where AI can do almost anything.
So it's not just about finding a job. It's about creating a job or creating a role for yourself that's uniquely tailored to your skills and interests.
Exactly. It's about finding that unique human spark that machines, at least for now, can't replicate.
And he also talks a lot about personal branding,
Yes.
right?
That's a huge part of it.
Like becoming known for something specific that sets you apart from the crowd.
Exactly. He says it's like building a moat around your skills and expertise.
A moat.
Yeah, like a protective barrier that makes it harder for others to compete with you.
So like if you're a writer,
Yeah.
you don't just want to be a good writer. You want to be the writer that people go to for a certain type of content or certain voice or perspective.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got diversifying income streams, building a personal brand. What else?
Well, this one might sound a little counterintuitive given all the talk about technology, but he also stresses the importance of building authentic connections with other people.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I thought we were supposed to be hunkering down in our AI-proof bunkers.
No, no, no. He actually argues that in a world that's increasingly dominated by technology, human relationships are going to become even more valuable.
Interesting. So it's like the more we automate and outsource our interactions,
Right.
the more we crave those genuine human connections.
Exactly.
And he's not just talking about like networking for professional gain.
Right.
He's talking about cultivating genuine friendships, building communities, finding ways to connect with others on a deeper level.
Exactly. He believes that these are the things that will ultimately give our lives meaning and purpose in a world where so much of what we do can be automated or outsourced.
It's funny because a lot of the conversations around AI focus on what we'll be able to do with this technology.
Right.
Like automate tasks, solve problems, generate content. But Marty seems to be saying that what will really matter is who we'll be with in this new world.
I think that's a really important point.
Our ability to connect with each other, to collaborate,
Mm.
to empathize those are the qualities that will truly set us apart from the machines.
And one of the most important skills for building those connections is sales.
Wait, what?
I know it sounds strange, but hear me out.
Okay, I'm listening.
He's not talking about being a pushy used car salesman. He's talking about the fundamental human skill of persuasion,
Okay.
being able to communicate your ideas effectively, to build rapport, to understand and respond to other people's needs.
Okay.
Those are skills that will be valuable no matter what the job market or the world looks like.
So it's less about closing deals
Right.
and more about building relationships.
Exactly.
Okay, I can get on board with that. So we've talked about moving away from tech hubs, diversifying income streams, building relationships, even learning how to sell. Is there any room for actually using AI to our advantage in all of this?
Of course.
Okay, good.
He's not anti-technology. He
Right.
just wants us to be mindful of how we use it.
Right.
And he actually encourages readers to learn as much as they can about AI and how it works.
So it's not about rejecting the technology.
Exactly.
It's about understanding it.
Right, and using it to our advantage.
So like becoming the master of the machine instead of the other way around.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. So we've covered a lot of ground here. From the potential of AI to reshape society, to the practical strategies that individuals can use to thrive in this new landscape. It's a lot to process. But I think the overall message of Beautiful Tsunami is one of cautious optimism, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. He's not sugarcoating the challenges, but he also sees this as a time of tremendous opportunity.
Right, like it's not all doom and gloom.
Exactly. It's about embracing the unknown and being willing to adapt and evolve as the world changes around us.
Okay, so what about the people who are listening to this right now and thinking, okay, this is all very interesting, but I'm still freaking out. What am I supposed to do?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't panic.
Okay,
This is not the time to make rash decisions or buy into any get-rich-quick schemes.
right.
The best thing you can do is to educate yourself about AI and how it's likely to impact your industry or profession.
Okay.
Start reading books like Beautiful Tsunami. Talk to people who are working in the field, and don't be afraid to experiment and try new things.
It's about being proactive, right?
Exactly. The future belongs to those who are willing to learn, adapt, and create.
I like that. So instead of trying to predict the future,
Yeah,
we should focus on creating the future we want to see.
exactly.
So we left off talking about taking control and being proactive.
Yeah, like really owning your future in this age of AI.
Exactly. So where do we go from here? What else does Marty suggest?
Well, he keeps coming back to this idea of embracing a sales mindset.
Yeah. Okay, you're going to have to explain that one because when I hear sales, I immediately think like used car lots and those aggressive guys on late night TV.
Right, exactly. But that's not what he's talking about at all.
Okay, good.
He's talking about the ability to persuade, to influence, to really connect with other human beings on a deeper level. Because in a world where so much of what we do can be automated or outsourced, those human skills, those are the things that are going to become even more valuable.
So it's not just about what you can do. It's about being able to communicate the value of what you do.
Exactly. It's about being able to tell a compelling story, to build rapport, to really understand and respond to other people's needs.
Okay, so it's less about closing deals and more about like building relationships.
Yeah.
Got it. So we've talked a lot about how individuals can kind of weather this beautiful tsunami. But what about businesses? Does Marty have any advice for companies that are trying to navigate this whole AI revolution?
He does, and it's pretty blunt.
Oh, boy.
He basically says that businesses that fail to adapt, they're going to be left in the dust,
Wow, no pressure.
right? But he's not wrong.
So what's the key to survival then?
Well, he says that companies need to be much more agile, much more data-driven.
Okay, so it's not enough to just like buy some fancy new AI software and call it a day.
Right. It's about fundamentally rethinking how you do business.
Interesting. So what might that look like in practice?
Well, for one thing, he says that companies need to get really good at collecting and analyzing data.
Data's definitely having a moment, right?
Right. And it's only going to become more important.
Okay, so collect all the data, but then what?
Then you use that data to make better decisions about everything from product development to marketing to customer service.
So it's not just about having the data, it's about knowing what to do with it.
Exactly. And that's where AI comes in.
Oh,
Because AI can help us to make sense of all that data, to find patterns and insights that we would never be able to see on our own.
so AI is like a superpowered analyst.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so we've got businesses becoming more data-driven using AI to make better decisions. What about the human element in all of this? Does Marty see any role for humans in this, like, AI-powered future of work?
Absolutely. In fact, he actually cautions against going too far in the other direction.
Meaning,
Like, he doesn't think that businesses should be trying to replace all of their employees with robots.
okay, good, because I was starting to get a little worried there for a second.
Yeah, no, he actually believes that the real power of AI lies in its ability to augment human intelligence, not replace it.
So it's not about man versus machine, it's
Yeah.
about man plus machine.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so practically speaking, what does that look like?
Well, it means finding ways for humans and machines to work together, each playing to their strengths.
So, like, AI can handle the tedious, repetitive tasks,
Right.
and humans can focus on the things that require creativity, critical thinking, emotional intelligence.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. It's funny to think that AI could actually end up making our work lives more human by freeing us up from all the things that machines are good at.
Right. It's like this weird paradox.
It is. Okay, so we've talked about the individual level, the business level. Is there anything else that Marty talks about that you think is important for people to know?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was his emphasis on the importance of profitability.
Okay, for businesses, right.
Right. But it's more than that.
Okay, how so?
He's saying that in order to have a positive impact on the world, businesses first need to make sure they are financially sustainable.
Okay, I've heard that called putting your own oxygen mask on first.
Exactly.
Like, you can't help others if you're drowning yourself.
Right. And he argues that this is even more important in the age of AI
How so?
because the pace of change is so rapid, so relentless, that businesses that aren't profitable, that aren't constantly adapting and evolving, they're just not going to survive.
So it's kind of a survival of the fittest situation.
In a way, yeah.
Well said. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from the potential of AI to reshape society, to the very practical strategies that individuals and businesses can use to thrive in this new landscape.
Mm.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
Absolutely.
And I think the overall message of Beautiful Tsunami is that the future is not something that's happening to us. It's something that we're creating together, whether we realize it or not.
And the choices we make today
Right.
are going to determine what that future looks like.
So choose wisely.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, on that note, thank you so much for diving into Beautiful Tsunami with me today.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners out there, be sure to check out next week's episode when we'll be